In the beginning, everything felt like these teeny tiny fires felt like the biggest wildfire ever. And I think that it's really helped kind of toughen my skin in business and realize that at the end of the day, like we're here to help people. And it is my job to make sure that we do the best that we can. But at the end of the day, I can't please everybody. And I'm a people pleaser by nature. And so that was something hard for me to jump through. And one of the things looking back, like I wish I would have realized that saying yes to everyone is doing myself a large disservice and doing them a large disservice, because I just thought I could promise the moon, and I realized in the beginning I was over promising and then under delivering, because the promises were just so high that they were probably, some of them, impossible to fill.
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we grow our careers or build a business while nurturing relationships and family. I'm Diane Mocha, founder and CEO of the MomSub Childcare app, which connects you to a substitute mom. And I want you to know that work can fit your life. Each week, we meet a woman who has done that. Today, I'm with Carson Wagner. She is the founder of Lifetime of Love Nannies. She launched the agency at the age of 19 and became one of the first in Nevada to accept state funding for special needs families. Now, 6 years later, she's mentoring other young women in college. Thanks for being here, Carson.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Diane.
We're glad you're here. And we have a lot in common. Both of us are serving families by helping them find nannies. And while there are a lot of women in this industry, you know that running a business can often be a smoother path for a man, right? Because they may get more access to capital and connections while we're sort of struggling for those things. And I want to know from you, what do you think has been the biggest challenge in your career and your business, specifically because you are a woman?
That's a really great question, Diane. I think I've had a lot of challenges in business, to say the least. I think really one of the biggest things that this question takes me back to is when I started the business. You had mentioned I was 19, and I had a lot of pushback with being a young woman going into people's homes and saying, "Hey, trust me with your kids." And I think there was a lot of ageism that I struggled with in the very beginning, which was really tough for me, and something that was hard for me to overcome in the beginning, because it was really hard when others weren't believing in me to continue to stay strong and believe in myself. So I feel that is probably the biggest challenge that I had to overcome in the beginning, because it can be really tough as a woman in business, and a young woman in business at that.
And how did you persevere? You have a lot of belief in yourself. You had a mission of what you wanted to do. But are there any specific times when you remember, like, I almost gave up and then, this thing happened, or I watched this video or read this book, or I don't know, what? Are there any lessons that you can impart about what it was that helped you to overcome those challenges of being a young woman and having people not take you seriously or trust you?
Definitely, definitely. I think one of the biggest things for me is trusting in my abilities and realizing that I was the one who was able to get here and saw this idea and vision that was in my head that is now at service helping others. And I think just time and time again telling myself, one, not to have a scarcity mindset, whether that is for myself or for others or my business. And then two, realizing that we're doing something that's really meaningful and impactful in these communities. Like we are a business that's built on trust and integrity and wants to make a difference. And so I think just having that passion in business and a passion for what I was offering really superseded any of the naysayers or doubts that I faced early on. And the more that I believed in myself and the more community that I built of different business owners and people that I just really looked up to and I wanted to learn from their trials and errors, having that community was imperative to my success, because I was able to go to these people and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," and I didn't feel alone. Feeling alone in business was really hard for me in the beginning, and just finding that community and finding others that I really value their feedback and know want me to persevere and thrive was really a great find early on. I wish it happened when I first started, but over the years, I've really put a lot of time and energy and efforts into building a great community around me. So when those hard times do come, there are people that are like, "Hey, I've been there. Let me share some experiences of how I got through this."
Do you have an advisory board or a board of directors?
Yeah, well, I have entrepreneurs organization that I absolutely love. I joined that about 2 years ago, and that has been phenomenal for me. And not just finding great connections in business, but finding friends and people that understand where I'm at, that I can feel really vulnerable with, and just share my 5% of struggles that I don't share with the rest, and knowing that they're there for my best interest.
Mhm. I understand one big facet of your business is helping those families who have children on the spectrum. So you're a
Mhm.
big advocate of autism awareness and support. What got you involved in that? Do you know someone in your family or your friend group that's on the spectrum? Has it affected you in any way personally?
Yeah, honestly, it was one of my first jobs when I was in high school. I just applied to this random job online and I had no idea what it was. And I interviewed and I got the job. And I had my first day and it was caring for adults on the spectrum, and I just fell in love with it. So I ended up getting my registered behavioral technician license, an RBT, and I was an RBT for the time frame that I was in college. And I just really, really loved the job. I felt like I was really doing something that, I was being a good contributing member to society and doing something that was really helping others, and it filled my cup at the end of the day. And I just realized when I was an RBT for these different families that there was such a lack of resources. And they didn't have anyone that could come and care for their children when I wasn't there. And so I found myself nannying a lot of times for these children and these families. And then I would go online and research, what are different options for these families that I'm caring for? And I just was not finding any viable options. And so I decided to drop out and start Lifetime of Love Nannies. Best decision I ever made. And yeah, we're really big on being acceptable to all children of all capabilities. That's really our why factor.
Wow. Well, that's quite the story. What were you studying at the time?
Yeah, I wish I even remembered. I
So it
think
wasn't
that
as important. Obviously, it wasn't something you were passionate about. Were you going to
no.
college because it's something that you do, that you're supposed to do, that your family expected? Was there any kind of pushback from family or friends about dropping out? Were you concerned about what others might think?
Yeah, I went to college just because I mean, I feel like any 18-year-old, it's like, okay, what next? Like what am I supposed to do? What does society say I'm supposed to do? It's a hard time and you're kind of lost. You don't really know what you're passionate about. Most don't. And I knew that I wanted to do something that was meaningful and impactful, but I genuinely didn't know what the heck that was. And so I was like, do I want to be a doctor? Do I want to, like, what do I want to do? I really wanted to become a BCBA that's more so in the therapy realm for autism. And so I was like, maybe I'll do that. I didn't really know. I really didn't know. And so I definitely wasn't very passionate about going to college. I'm not really a book studies kind of girl. And so I was actually really relieved when I dropped out. I think my whole family thought I was a bit, crazy. Because when I first started my business, I mean, I had never done payroll, I had never written a contract, I had never sent a professional email, I had never had anything in the administrative side. And when you start a business, as so many people know, it is not just, you are not just the nanny, you're not just the bookkeeper, you're not just the legal counsel, like you're everything in the beginning. And so I think I honestly learned so much through hands-on trial and error than I ever could have with any other path that I could have chosen. And it's been great because over the last 6 years, I've learned so much, not just about business, but about myself.
why start the business? You were a nanny, you were helping these families. It sounds like multiple families who had children with these needs. You could have maybe even, gotten a few friends to help, but what was it that sparked your idea that this should be a business? I'm going to start a business. I'm going to make money at a business. Like, or did you even think through all that? Or you just said, hey, I'll just quit and do this and make it a business?
Exactly, the second one that you just said. I did not think through anything. I just knew like, okay, I'm gonna start this and, we need first of all, we're in Reno, that was my first location. So I was like, okay, I need something that's 24/7 because we're the biggest little city in the world. That's our slogan out here. So I need something that's 24/7 and I need something that's accessible to all children of all capabilities. And so that was just my why. Like I just knew what my why was. I knew what I wanted to do and when my first employee was like, "Hey, how do I get paid?" I'm like, "That's a really good question. Let's figure out what the heck is payroll and how does this work?" And it was so much trial and error in the beginning that I think there's never a perfect time to start anything. And I think it can be so easy to have these ideas in my head and think about all the reasons why I shouldn't do it. So I'm really grateful that at the time little me was like, "Hey, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna take it by storm, and I'm not gonna do a ton of research into it." And I'm really glad I didn't, because I probably would have scared myself and been like, "This is too much. What am I thinking?" But yeah, I had a passion. There was a will. There was a way, and I'm so grateful that it happened the way it happened. And now we've expanded to multiple locations and our franchising and all the things. And that definitely wouldn't have happened if I would have procrastinated or just allowed this idea to stay an idea, and that can be so easy to do.
You didn't know what you didn't know, so you jumped in. Yeah.
Yeah,
And now you
exactly.
say that you wanted to make sure you could offer 24/7. So
Mhm.
is it nannies 24/7, like a person that works, say, in the casino, second shift or third shift, and they need someone, every day or several days a week? Or is it like sitter fill-ins or for people who are on vacation out of town and they're at a hotel and they need someone so they can go out and someone can be with the kids? How does it work?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's all of the above. So we do newborn all the way to senior care, non-medical right now. We're getting into the medical field right now and doing our home health care license currently with another business. But uh yes, so we do all of the above. We do newborn care, we do overnights. Your family schedules are 100% customizable with us. So, really, any days or times they need, we can fill. We just have a 2 hour minimum, but we can go for weeks at a time. So, if someone just needs a date night or if someone needs a full time nanny, we really want to be that one stop shop turnkey solution for families, no matter what they're looking for, and really evolve. A childcare evolves from the time baby's a newborn to the time the child's 12 years old. Like, what used to need to be full-time care maybe now is before and after school transportation to extracurricular activities. So we really want to be able to mold and grow with these families as their families mold and grow. So that's really the idea behind it. And one of the really special things that we do here is we employ all of our nannies. So everyone is a W-2 employee, which is a bit abnormal in this industry. And so we want our nannies to have access to healthcare benefits. We want our nannies to really view this as a career, and we want to be able to give growth paths and career paths, and we want to be able to train them, and those are all things you can't do with a 1099 contractor, and they're not legally to be classified as such. And so I just saw early on in the industry that, I mean, even myself, I would be paid as a nanny and it would be under the table. I would get paid under the table, and then maybe a family would show up 30 minutes later and I wasn't compensated for that time. And then as a nanny, it's kind of awkward. You're in front of these families to be like, "Hey, you shorted me." Like, you really have to advocate for yourself in this field. And I just wanted to be an agency that nannies also come to, that they know that we advocate for them, for their pay, for their hours, for treating them as a W-2 employee so they can get a loan if they want to, and they do have proof of income. So that was just a non-negotiable for me, was, making the decision to really employ. And I think that's what has really made the business what it is today, because we are such a great resource for our nannies and we have such a great retention rate, and we're such a great resource for families and can really mold and grow and shape to what their needs are given their current situations.
Mhm. And you talked about when you first started, people questioned, you were young and you had some experience as a nanny, but not as a parent. So I wonder, did you have childcare experience growing up? Did you have younger siblings? What about yourself now that you're around children so much? Do you see children in your future? Have you had any children come into your life? Do you have nieces and nephews?
Yeah, so I have my little sister who's 3 years younger than me. She actually works with me here in the office for Lifetime of Love, which has been a really, really cool experience. A lot of people are like, "Don't work with your family," but I think it can be a little rough in the start. But I think we found a really good flow of like, hey, we can't always be sisters and doing our little arguments here and there. Like, we've got to have a bit of a professional sense. So it's been so cool to see her every day and just have like a family business. I really, really couldn't be happier with that, and being able to see my little sister every day. And like you said, I don't have any kids myself. I do have fur babies, which I consider to be my kids. But I feel like the childcare experience that I had when I was growing up was more so kind of babysitting, here and there, neighborhood kids and things of that sort. And I've always really loved kids. I love kids tremendously. And I think growing the next generation is something to just not take lightly. Like, it is such a huge job. And so I've always really had a passion for it and loved it. I definitely don't think I saw myself owning a nanny agency or a household staffing business. But it's always been something I've really loved. And so it's really great to see, over the years we have kids that started with us that were these teeny tiny newborns, 2 days old, that are now 5 years old with these huge personalities. And it's been so rewarding, over the years, just to see these families and these children and like how we've really made a difference in their lives, and, being a support and a village for families. Because years and years ago, all of our families lived so close to each other, and that's just not really the way the world is anymore. And so it really takes a village to, have a family. It really does. And we want to be that village for the families that we serve. And we really take that, we don't take that lightly. We really want to be a trusted source. We're not only going in these families' homes where they live, but we're also caring for their most precious thing in this whole entire world. So we just don't want to take that lightly.
Yeah. Yeah, we have that in common too. That's exactly where we're at, is we want to be that village because we know there's so many families that don't have that. And I know the obstacles that, you confront as a business owner. And I wonder what were some of the big ones that you confronted when you talked about, hey, we wanted to make sure that we were taking care of our nannies. We wanted to make sure that we are available 24/7. How difficult was it? I'm sure in the beginning it was mostly just you, or maybe you and your sister, to get through some of these things, whether there were regulatory issues or financial issues. What were some of the big obstacles and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think for me, I it was just me in the beginning. It was just me in the office, and I was, when you say 24/7, I was literally working, answering my phone 24/7 is how it felt. I remember I could not take a second away. Like, I remember it's such like a core memory of mine. I was sitting at a lunch with my grandma on like a random, Saturday afternoon, and I had to like get up and leave. I think it was like 6 or 7 times that we counted during that lunch. And I just like, my social life was nothing. It was severely suffering. And being 24/7 and saying, "Oh, hey, we're 24/7," and then realizing, "Oh, that means I'm answering the phones 24/7." I remember I would get up at like 3 in the morning, we'd get a call, and I'd be doing jumping jacks before answering the phone so I could wake myself up and function. I mean, it was really, really challenging in the beginning. I really like looking back, I'm like, how in the world did I even do that and not go crazy? I think I probably went a little crazy at times, but I kept it together for the most part. And I think the biggest thing for me in the business's success and my personal well-being was realizing that I am not the best at everything, and I don't need to be the best at everything, but my job as a business owner and an entrepreneur is to find people that are at the best at one thing and encourage them in that and help them grow in that one thing. And so, I used to think I was the best at scheduling. Like, I'm the only one that can put this puzzle piece together of this schedule because it's so many people, so many families, everyone has these different preferences. Well, I hired a scheduling coordinator who is leaps and bounds better than I am about putting a schedule together. And so just taking those steps and realizing that like having an internal team is the biggest blessing I could have ever asked for in my business because I cannot grow alone. Like, I cannot do any of this by myself. And I completely owe so much to my team that has seen my vision and seen where I want the business to go and just kind of, hopped on the train with me and really helped the business to get to where it is today. And I always tell people that are starting businesses, I'm like, the minute you can hire help, hire help. Like, it, is an investment in the beginning, but boy, does it have the best ROI when you have the right people. And so that's been huge to me is being able to say yes to accepting help and hiring help and just putting trust in others that they care and they want the business to grow that the way that I do and they see the vision. So that's really been the biggest thing for me because in the beginning I was just so terrified to hire anyone. I was terrified to get help. I didn't even know. I'm like, I need help, but what position do I even create? Like, I don't even have the name of a position that I would hire someone for. Like, what would this be? And I just hired someone one day, got them in there and was like, hey, I'm going to have you basically shadow me for a week. Tell me, like, write a list of all the things you think you'd enjoy and you'd be good at. And then let's come up with a position based off those things that you can help take off my plate. And then I've just basically repeated that again and again, the more positions that we create and fill.
Nice. So, by doing that, you probably saved yourself from burnout that you may have been facing. You can only do 24/7 so long, no matter how young and how committed you are. And so, thank
Mhm.
goodness you recognize that, made that investment, like you said, to expand and get a team. I wonder, as you look back at the beginning of your business, those crazy times, the jumping jacks, the interruptions with your grandma's lunch, if you could go back to the start of your business, knowing then what you know now, what would you change then?
Yeah, I would change hiring help sooner. I would have definitely asked for help sooner than I did. But I think back and I don't know if there's really a whole lot I would change because I think there were so many instrumental lessons that I learned from creating mistakes because I created so many mistakes, in the beginning that could have totally been avoided with what I know now. But I'm really happy I created those mistakes, as, devastating as they may have felt. In the beginning, everything felt like these teeny tiny fires felt like the biggest wildfire ever. And I think that it's really helped kind of toughen my skin in business and realize that at the end of the day, like, we're here to help people. And, it is my job to make sure that we do the best that we can. But at the end of the day, I can't please everybody. And I'm a people pleaser by nature. And so that was something hard for me to jump through. And one of the things looking back, like, I wish I would have realized that saying yes to everyone is doing myself a large disservice and doing them a large disservice because I just thought I could promise the moon and I realized in the beginning I was over promising and then under delivering because the promises were just so high that they felt they were probably some of them impossible to fill. And, looking back, those are things that I tell my team now, like, we do not want to overpromise. Like we want to, and I know we really want to help, but we also need to be realistic and what are the things we can genuinely help with. So yeah, overpromising and under delivering, that was a hard one for me because you kind of feel like you failed, if you can't meet these crazy high expectations of, finding this, that, and the other within a 2-hour period, just all of these crazy things, it feels like you kind of failed. So I think just, realizing that we're the experts in what we do and it's okay to say no and it's okay to find different routes and you don't have to say yes to everybody. And you're not failing them and you're not failing yourself. You're actually doing them a better service because you're being honest, And so that was just something really hard in the beginning. I wanted to please everyone. I wanted everyone to just love Lifetime of Love Nannies and love me. And like anything that was negative, so to speak, was like a direct shot to my personal heart. I took it so personal. So over the years, I've definitely learned to not take, I still take things personal. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm human, but I've learned that at the end of the day, like Carson and Lifetime of Love Nannies are two separate entities. Like I still can be my own person. And just because something happens within the business or someone's upset or maybe a nanny quits or something happens, that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means that it wasn't a good fit and that's okay. We're not going to be the best fit for everyone. And that's why there's so many other awesome, options out there for childcare. So yeah, that was a big core lesson for me was not over promising. And I now like tell myself that all the time. I'm like, don't over promise, Carson. Like as much as you want to do this, let's be realistic here. Like you may want to find someone that has someone wants a horseback riding nanny that speaks 3 languages in the next 3 days. Maybe, maybe if we don't have that on the team right now.
To pay
Um,
$15 an hour.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
That happen.
and yeah, and they wanna pay him, $50 a day for 8 hours. Yeah, it's like, okay, like, maybe, not every client's the best fit for the agency because we really wanna do nannies a service too and, like, give them jobs that are really purposeful to them and that they feel, is sustainable, They work because they're passionate about it and they love it, but it's also, their livelihood. So yeah, we just really try to, accommodate everyone and the unique needs that they have, but also try to be realistic with what we can offer.
Mhm. And I think that's so important for other women to hear who are often people pleasers and think that, I can't let anyone down, having realistic expectations for yourself and others and not just
Mhm.
promising the world and then letting the world drain you. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I hope that you were inspired by today's story. If so, remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you want to invest in a solution to the childcare crisis, check out MomSub's equity crowdfunding campaign at momsub.com/invest or connect with MomSub on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. That's MomSub, like a substitute mom. Our mission is for you to discover what you want in life, pursue it with intensity, reach out for help when needed, and fulfill your dream, reducing your stress, guilt, and self criticism, and increasing your calm, confidence, and clarity along the way. Remember, your career, your choices, and your success are yours to define. So keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.